patriotism, faith, national unity, education, fiscal responsibility, civility, the values that define America. Fascinating stories and talks from America-loving patriots dedicated to preserving freedom, opportunity, and justice. Welcome to the Friends and Fellow Citizens podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 82. This is part 2 of our conversation with our special guest, Dana McLendon. If you haven't checked out part 1, make sure to take a listen down in the show notes below. You can feel free to come back to part 2 when you're finished with part 1. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our email list or subscribe to our podcasts so that you get the latest episodes right to your inbox or right to your notifications feed. In part 1, we spoke a little bit about the Hot Crazy Matrix, some initial reactions, and a little bit about technology. In part 2, we will be resuming some conversation about technology, about the Hot Crazy Matrix reactions, and the relevance of comedy, as well as how the family structure is in today's society. And now, back to our conversation in part 2. The deep fakes. That's something that it just seems like, something that I wouldn't be super inclined to do. I'm not a video editing person or anything. I don't know how this kind of stuff works, but imagine you mentioned again earlier how how you've been involved with city council. Imagine if, it is kind of happy now, but imagine if someone could take what a city council member or a politician or whoever and was able to make them sound like they said something really bad. And the problem is that unless you see that person live, you don't know how the authenticity. You don't understand the authenticity. You don't know if that is authentic, and that contributes to that.
Well, or the context has been like one of the very first things that happened to me when the video went viral was that Channel 4, and where I live in Franklin, Tennessee, the Channel 4 is out of Nashville. They did what I consider to this day to be a total hit piece. They clearly decided that they were going to cover the story in a way that cast a bad light on me for whatever reason. And they cobbled together little bits and pieces of information and spun it up in a way that made it look like I was definitely and intentionally a bad person, and the proof was this viral video that they hardly ever covered actually in the news piece. And it was so bad that I got a call the next day from a lady that told me she was also a lawyer. I'd never heard of her. I don't know every lawyer, but she said she was a lawyer, and she was just railing on me. And I said, well, why are you calling me and so upset? And she said, well, I saw you on the news and what you said. And I said, did you see the video? No. I said, do you otherwise know anything about me? And she said, no. I said, so you're calling me in reality, in real time. You have found me and called me to berate me about the person you think I am based upon a 3-minute story that Channel 4 did last night. You know nothing else about me. Yes, and I'm very mad, blah, blah, blah. She didn't slow down at all. And I just said to her finally, I said, let me ask you something. Based upon who you think I am, what in the world did you think was going to happen when you called me and told me I was what you think I am? And she was like, well, I wanted you to apologize and take it down. And I said, I am absolutely not going to apologize or take it down. And that's not because I am what you think I am. Jesus. And she just didn't know where to go with that.
Oh, boy. Jesus.
So it doesn't even have to be like super technical deep fake. It can just be like spin. And the next thing you know, I had a real live human being calling me from, 5 miles away from where I live, absolutely convinced that I was the worst person on the planet this week. I don't think I am, but whatever. I'm not going to say that I did something brave. I mean, the reality is I can't take it down, and I'm not going to apologize. And I've just sort of, when people get upset, I've just sort of challenged them and said, let me ask you something. If you had seen that video 7 minutes into Saturday Night Live, it was a skit that they put on. Would you be bent? Well, that's comedy. Like, or they usually try to deny the point, like if it hit your Facebook feed or if it hit your YouTube feed or someone sent you a link and you just went to it cold and you didn't think it was funny, well, that's fine. I'm not saying there's a universal funny, but it went hyper viral because people thought it was funny, not because they thought it was horrible. Like things that people find that offensive maybe get up and down quickly. But we're talking 7.5 years later, and people are still tracking me down, you included, to talk about this thing that they found funny. So I think I think the debate has been over for a long time. It is widely received as funny. Good. I made millions and millions of people laugh. I'm happy about that. I'm not going to apologize. If it makes you upset, maybe ask yourself, what is it that made you upset? I don't know. I mean, it's not, and I found out that there's about everywhere it went that there was about a 5% bad reaction rate. Okay. These are the same people, I guess, that go to comedy clubs and then pitch a fit when the comedian tells a joke that they don't like. I don't understand. Like, nobody ever was compelled to watch my video. Ever. You were free to walk away, push stop, click, whatever. You could leave anytime you wanted. And yet they would watch the whole thing and get madder and madder. I don't know. I don't think that's on me.
This is why I think it's so important for people just in general to accept that there's going to be these kinds of people out there, and it doesn't help when going back to what we've been saying. It doesn't help to hide behind a highlight reel or to accept that a highlight reel is representative of someone's life or their character. It's just really odd.
Well, that's the other thing, right? I mean, I've been a lawyer. By the time I filmed that video, I'd been a lawyer 25 years. I'd been a parent. I've been a husband, son, a brother. I have a mom. I had a mom. My mom died last year, but at the time I made the video, I had a mom. I have a sister. I have nieces. I don't have any daughters, but it wouldn't have changed anything. It's like, it's, if we can't laugh at stuff, then I don't really know what we're doing here. Like and maybe it's just a coping mechanism for a deeply troubled, middle-aged lawyer. But I tend to laugh at stuff rather than, get wrapped around the axle. It went hyper viral and hundreds of millions of people saw it because they thought it was funny. If the first 50,000 people that saw that video thought it was terrible and reprehensible, then another 50,000 people would never have seen it.
Market has spoken in a way. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, don't be mad at me.
Oh gosh, that's I really love how we're really delving into a lot of these issues that, like I said earlier, I feel like this is what makes, you mentioned authenticity. Anyone who speaks to me or you or a number of people out there, you get the real deal. You don't get anything else. This is the real deal.
When the video went viral, I got called by Hollywood. I got called by a handful of studios because they haven't had an original thought in 30 years. They're just waiting around for the next viral video so they can buy the rights and make it into a movie. So I got called by a bunch of studios, and I ended up flying out there and meeting with some studios to talk about making it into a movie or something. And I was sitting this is a legitimate Hollywood guy. This is a guy who's actually in a position to make movies, right? And he looks at me and he goes, I just have to ask you, Dana, how did you conceive of that character? I mean, and how did you know that, like, to make the quality of the video really, like, crummy, like really bad, because it just lent this gritty, this reality, and this character that you conceived is just brilliant. How did you come up with that? And I just looked at him. I was like, stick around for 10 minutes. You'll understand. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Like, and I'd get in the room with them, and like most of them figured out within like 3 minutes that the guy in the video is here, right? Like there's no, I didn't have to like do a get into character. But some of them thought that it was all like conceived and designed, and they're so committed. They're so used to being surrounded by fakery that they think everything is fake. They couldn't even tell the real from the unreal. I just laughed at that guy. I was like, I literally just looked at him. I was like, stick around for 10 minutes. You'll understand.
Kick in the cognitive dissonance in that guy's mind. It's kind of mind blown almost.
Yeah, it never occurred to him that I might just actually be that way.
Oh gosh. Oh my gosh. That's so great. And I like to add a quote that from Washington as well, which I think is actually a couple of quotes here. First is about marriage. I have always considered marriage as the most interesting event of one's life, the foundation of happiness or misery. I think this might be a quote that Dana might relate to in terms of your career and what you've seen. But the other one, it's a very broad one, but I think it's very, very prevalent, very relevant to our conversation today, which is, quote, be courteous to all, but intimate with a few, and let those few be well tried before you give them your confidence, unquote. I bring these up because it's very concerning when I see people, I know that we've gone through the COVID pandemic and all that, but I've always emphasized personally to my friends and to my family that it is very important to have that, to recognize that we need that in-person experience, seeing people, interacting with each other. The fact that I think that things like Zoom and all that, I think those are Band-Aid solutions, but we don't put Band-Aids on so that we leave them on forever. We take them out once the wound is healed, once we are able to interact with others. And Dana, I'd just like to ask you what your thoughts are about just how maybe some things that you've learned or things that have been reinforced during this pandemic when it comes to relationships between people, when it comes to the family unit and all that, just to kind of as like a bit of a takeaway perhaps over what we've seen over the last couple years or so.
I'm terribly cynical, but I've earned the right. I think now, okay, let me preface this by saying that no one calls me and tells me that they're so happily married they just wanted to call a divorce and criminal defense lawyer and tell them.
Yes.
So my sample size has selected itself to begin with. All right. No one calls me and tells me I've got $5,000. I want to bring it to you and tell you how happy I am or what crime I didn't commit. Okay. So my sample size is skewed. I'll admit that. I think that the pandemic did a couple things. It as far as like, especially in intimate relations and in the family units, I think for some percentage, and I don't know exactly what percent, but I think maybe, 15, 20%, if I was just guessing, and it's completely subjective. The guess is subjective, and the metric, the rubric for measuring it would also be. But I think there's some percentage of households and families that when the pandemic hit, they were sort of forced to see one another and be with one another and wrestle with the stuff that they otherwise could ignore. And I think for some small percentage, and when I say small, I mean like not majority, but some number of people leaned in, and they found that the time that they were now putting in the same place reminded them and reinforced for them why they were there in the first place. And they were better off for it. Because they weren't going anywhere. And then they were like, you know what, now that I've spent, however long with this person, on any up until March of 2020, we got up every day and we went different directions and we drove the kids around separately. And then we wound up at the same place and went to bed in the same bed. And that was about it. Right. There's a lot of people living parallel lives. And that was suddenly changed. And they were suddenly not leaving. They were suddenly not spending a lot of time elsewhere. And for some of those people, they wound up better off because they were able to sit down and they were like, you know what, I really do like this person. Or, we talked about the things that were like, we ran out of other stuff. We ran out about the easy stuff to talk about. So we talked about the hard stuff. So they're better off. I think there was a number of people that maybe about the same number that it accelerated the end. And maybe that was the best thing that could happen. They were not going to their life was not going to get better, whether they spent more time or less together. They just needed to be done because they did not have the skill set and they had way too much contempt and conflict and damage done between them. And wherever the tipping point was that relationship could no longer be salvaged, they were past it, but they were absent the pandemic. They were just going to keep grinding it out slowly. They were just going to grind a little at a time until the bitter end and someone died. So the pandemic for some people accelerated a necessary end. And then for a lot of people, they just sort of adapted to the underlying and the core didn't change very much and maybe didn't need to change very much. They were just doing it slightly differently. Human beings, at the same time that we have not evolved to manage the overwhelming amount of technology and data and distraction that we are now getting from our technology, at the same time, we are very adaptable and able to implement rapid change. So, just on a micro level, for me, I've been a lawyer for 30 years. We've been talking about technology in courtrooms for decades. But no one ever anywhere would have suddenly said, you know what, starting next week, we're going to let lawyers appear in court on camera. And even if we had decided we were going to do it, we'd still be studying it 2 years later. We'd still be forming committees and coming up with budgets and sending out RFQs and trying to figure out whether or not it could be done. Well, bam, all of a sudden it had to be done. And so it was, it's like, there you go. Boom. So now when people say, oh, they want to get back to normal, I don't want to get back to normal. I do not want to get back to normal. As a self-employed trial lawyer in a law office of one lawyer, I do not want to have to drive everywhere that a judge will allow me to appear on Zoom for a uncontested or low controversy, easy thing. So I live south of Nashville. I've got a judge in Gallatin that I appear in front of. I mean, not regularly, but often enough to know I don't have to get up and drive to Gallatin. They'll turn on the Zoom and schedule me in and we handle our business. And I never left home. And that's the world's better for that. So that's not really about families or anything, but, I can tell you this. I think there's a whole lot of people my age and older that suddenly got good at technology that otherwise might never have done that have now been able to integrate into far away or maybe not far away, but like otherwise not quite as accessible other people in their family. We just did a fond farewell for my mother yesterday at the nursing home where she lived when she passed away. And there were 25 family members from around the country that were on the Zoom that I just threw my phone up on a tripod and they were able to participate and they wouldn't have been there. So they were there and they were able to chat with each other during the Zoom while the camera pointed at the event. So they had their own little party going on online. And the vast majority of those people were my parents' age. And I'd be willing to bet you that absent a pandemic, not a single one of them would have understood or ever had a reason to think that they needed to know how to participate in something called Zoom.
Very well said. And I hope that, as we often think about generational gaps and differences and all that, well, every generation is unique in terms of the circumstances they encounter, but hopefully technology can at least alleviate some of those differences, and for positive good, obviously. And I certainly share that.
Yeah, my dad still struggles with text messaging, but that's okay. Well,
Yeah. Okay.
you
I
text my
I
dad and like you text my dad something like, "Hey, Dad, are you home? I need to drop something off." And 3 days later, you get yes. So, the, for him, it may not be a net gain. I don't know.
Sure, sure. It def seems like sometimes when I communicate with some other people, it's like, is this faster or the Pony Express? So, uh,
Yeah. My dad yesterday at the end of the thing, I had prepared a PowerPoint presentation and set up with my dad's direction, I had set up a playlist for the party. My mom wanted us to have a party for her when she died. So we had a party for her, and my dad wanted this specific genre of music. He wanted beach music, shag, like low country South Carolina beach music. It's what they grew up listening to. So I put that together on Spotify, and then I put together a slideshow on PowerPoint that ran during the party. And I had like 125 pictures we'd accumulated from my mother's childhood all the way up to the end. And when we were done, my dad came over to me. He goes, "Hey, did you get all those pictures and that music back from that lady?" And I was like, "Yeah, we're good." He didn't. He didn't understand that what I'd given her was completely digital and that there was nothing to like take back from her physically. He wanted to be sure that we got all the pictures back. I was like, "Yeah, I got it, Dad. We're good."
got it. Yeah, we're good. We're good. I one time spoke with someone who was he was saying we got to check, does is it available at the, you got to go to the computer store to get something, like to get like a, or to read an article or something. And one of the persons was like, computer store, like what do you mean, like a Microsoft store or an Apple store? And it's like, no, the computer store. And it's like where all the articles are, or where, and I was like, the
Right.
articles, wouldn't you go to like a newspaper? And turns out he meant the internet. It took a little while.
Yeah. So when I was in law school, the internet was just starting to like break into like life. I left law school and I did not have an email address, and I had never had an email address. So this was 93. I didn't get an email address until I joined a big law firm that was out there on the front end of technology. But in law school, we had, what the old school LexisNexis Westlaw stuff. And it was all on a monochrome green screen. It wasn't anything like it is now. So, you know, but you could actually go you could actually go and find things and read stuff. And I was trying to explain to my grandmother how this internet library worked. And my grandmother, so this was 93, so she was 70 something, long since dead. But at the time, I was explaining to her, "Yes, Grammy, I can basically get the entire Library of Congress right here on this computer." And she was furious at me because she was absolutely convinced that I was just trying to tease an old lady. And I was like, "No, I'm like," and I just finally realized that she could not wrap her head around it. That, and to me, it was just an evolution, like I had grown up with, the old Tandy computers that we wrote basic, code when we were kids. And then we had some apples in the classroom, mostly in math class. So like computers were not like, they sort of come of age while I was growing up, and then the internet hit. But my grandmother just could not wrap her head around the possibility that there would be vast libraries of knowledge on the internet. And then years later, my father came home from duck hunting one time, and he said, "Well, I got to go to the phone store. I've broken my phone." And I was like, "Oh no, what happened?" He said, "Well, I went duck hunting, and it's gotten all kinds of moisture in it, and I can't get the moisture out of the screen." And so my mom and my dad went to the Apple store, and my dad showed the man his phone, and he said, I think I got condensation in it when I was in the duck blind." And the guy took the phone and looked at it. Do you remember the old like screen, the old like wallpaper that
Yes.
had drops of water? My father had confused the
Oh no.
wallpaper drops of water for water that was on the backside of the glass. And so without embarrassing my dad at all, the guy just took my dad's phone and he was like, I think I can take care of this for you, sir. And he like got my dad to unlock it and he like changed the wallpaper and he handed it back to my dad. And he's like, I think we're good. My dad was like, wow, how'd you do that? And my mom figured out what had happened. And but my dad literally went to the Apple store to have them fix his phone because he had selected the dewdrop wallpaper and thought that he'd ruined his phone.
Wow. Oh wait. So
And now my sons, who are, how old are you?
I'm 25 this year.
Okay, so my sons are your age. So now they mock me, like if I don't instantly know how to like manipulate TikTok or something, now they're like, okay, grandpa. Oh, so they've already started like, reminding me that my time for technological illiteracy will come.
First of all, kudos to that guy at the Apple store, because I think he took it. It's customer service right there. But the other thing is, I'm definitely watching myself when it comes to, before I say it kind of goes back to the whole thing of like, kind of what goes around comes around. And for me, I'm just like, okay, well, before I say comment anything about this technology to someone of a different generation, maybe I should be thinking a little bit about how, in the future, there's gonna be people younger than me who would be like, it's like, you don't know how to work AI, or you don't know how to work this, or whatever the next technology is. I'm just gonna be I'm just gonna be just as confused.
Yeah, because the rate of change is happening faster than any, like, I'm fairly literate, technologically wise, but I mean, it won't be long before, 3-year-olds are able to, like my parents could never program a VCR, right? Like the joke when I was coming up was that, you know, when the power went out, you had to send the children around the house to set the clocks on all the VCRs because no adult in the house knew how to do it. And so same, now it's whatever the equivalent of that is, but this is the proof that the human being does not evolve as fast as the technology, and that young people always think old people are, like at best, like hilariously incompetent, and old people always look at young people and go, "Back in my day, we had a pencil, and we were happy we had a pencil."
uh,
Same joke, different, different technology.
that's right. That's absolutely. Let's see. Before we get to our reflection plays, real quick, Dana, I'd like to give you an opportunity first. First of all, share a little bit about what you like to leave to the audience about the video, and obviously I'll have the original link down the show notes below, so I'll work with you to get that in there. Yeah.
Yeah, just go to my. I think I have exactly one video on my channel because the channel that we originally put it up on has been banned by YouTube for reasons unrelated to my video. So just go ahead and just Google me, find me, and link to me. That way I'll get, And it's funny because the video that was originally posted was ripped off and reposted, and hundreds of millions of people saw it. And now the real one by the real guy is sitting there on YouTube with like 2,000 views or something. So that's kind of the way it goes. I don't know. What do you want to know about what you mean, like what's happened since or what have you?
Yes. Any ideas for the future on just making the video even more viral than it is already, or something, maybe with merchandise or any kind of future ideas that you're thinking about?
Oh yeah, man. I sold a bunch of t-shirts. I've kind of, um, I've accepted the fact that this is it. I will, I don't know what I would have to do. I'm sure it would have to be something just absolutely horrible to have my legacy become something other than the hot crazy matrix guy. Like I'd have to do some, I don't know what, probably something unspeakable to like eclipse my fame as the hot crazy Matrix guy, because I tell people that I'm the most famous person they'll ever meet that they would never recognize, because everyone has seen the video. Like I can show people a screenshot and they're like, "Oh yeah, I did see that." And I'm like, "Well, that's me." And they're like, "No, it's not." I mean, I literally had a guy I was getting, and this happens to me every week, and we're talking going on 8 years later. And something like this happens every week. I was sitting in the chair getting my hair cut. Obviously, the 3 girls in the joint that cut my hair are all familiar with the video, because obviously I had to tell them. They all got sent the video, right? Everybody sent the hairdressers in their life the video. So I get my hair cut. They all know who I am. I'm sitting there getting my hair cut. Guy walks in the door. He's watching the video. Like, right? He walks in. He's 2 minutes in. And he's laughing. And he's like, "Man, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen. My buddy sent me this. Man, you got to see this. This is hilarious." Now, we've all heard. We know what it is. There's me and these 3 girls in there, and one of them's cutting my hair. We already know what's about to happen, right? This guy is like, "This is the funniest thing I've ever seen. My buddy just sent me this. I can't believe this. This is the funniest thing I've ever seen." And he sat down and I looked at him and he was still watching it. I said, "Hey, man, that's me." And he goes, "I know, dude. It's all of us. Like we've all been there." And I go, No. That is me." And he's like, "I know, man. All of us, like every dude has been through this." And I'm like, "You're not tracking what I'm saying, man. I'm telling you, the dude in that video is me. Like that is me." And he looks at me and he cocks his head and he's like, "No way." And he literally gets up and comes over and holds the phone up next to my face while I'm getting a haircut. And he's like, "Oh my God, it is you." I'm like, who would claim to be that wasn't? And he couldn't believe it. And he took a selfie with me and sent it back to the dude that had just sent him the video. So, I don't really have any plans. I mean, I've just sort of accepted that this is, everybody that knows me knows I did this video. And so like, if I meet someone new, they're like, "This is the dude that did the video." And then they're like, "Oh my God, dude, you got dude, me and my buddies, we saw it. And like one of them was dating a Tiffany. And then we told him he had to get rid of her, but then got him arrested." And every week this happens. So I don't really have to do anything. It's still just happening. I was in talks with theaters, not with studios, to make a movie. About that time, the Me Too hashtag stuff really blew up, and nobody is going to greenlight a movie like this. Not right now. They're all just trying to not get arrested and fired. So I don't know if the pendulum ever swings back and somebody wants to put together a movie, or if they ever want to last month I flew out to Phoenix. A guy's making a documentary on people that got famous by making viral videos.
Oh, wow. There you go.
And he tracked me down and he called me up and he's like, "I gotta have the hot crazy Matrix guy." And I was like, "What do you want to do, dude?" And he was like, "I'll send you a ticket. I'll fly you out here. I'll feed you. I'll buy you drinks. I'll put you back on the plane. You go home." I was like, "Okay." So I flew out there and spent the day with him, and when and if he gets his documentary, he's just a dude putting together a documentary kind of as a side hustle. But of course I was going to say yes to that. Are you kidding me?
No, right? And well, first of all, the guy at the barbershop, I think his life is complete now.
Right? Not quite as often as it used to be, but it happens to me all the time. I mean, I could go on and I could tell you 50 anecdotes. I was in a really nice restaurant in downtown Nashville a couple of years ago, and people were watching the video in the booth behind me. I mean, a really nice restaurant. And I got up and my wife would look at me and she's like, "You are not gonna." And I go, "You bet I am." You think? So I got up and I walked over to their table and I go, "Hey guys, how y'all doing?" And they were like, "What are you doing, dude?" And I was like, "You like that video?" And they were like, "Yeah, it's funny. We were just showing them. They'd never seen it. We think it's hilarious." And I was like, "Yeah. Notice anything?" And the girl immediately was like, "Oh my God." So it happens.
You got one of the best conversation starters, Dana. I mean, that's it's, some as the saying goes from Shakespeare. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon you. I think you might be all three.
I didn't mean to change the world, but I think maybe I did. So
Absolutely. This has been, first of all, it's been a phenomenal conversation. It's not often that we get conversations like this, and
I'm not just a pretty face.
yes. I love how this, there's so many angles that we can take, but relating to Washington's farewell address, and there's really six pillars or principles from that speech, and to rename those, they're patriotism, faith, national unity, education, fiscal responsibility, and civility. So Dana, if you could pick one, I know you might be able to pick multiple, but if you could pick one of those pillars that you like to highlight, which one of those you think is most relevant to our discussion today, and really just, I guess, maybe the relation to the Hot Crazy Matrix? I think the only problem I have with Washington now is that he was 200 years early to watch this video and to be able to put that as part of the farewell address. That's the.
I think I have to say that I think my video would fall on deaf ears with the founding fathers. I think culturally it would be a miss with them. Maybe I'll edit the question and say which one of those principles do I wish we had a healthier dose of today? And I would say civility, because we have lost many people have intentionally discarded the ability to disagree with someone but respect them. They now there's a lot less honest debate and more simple ad hominem destruction, where you disagree not only with the idea, but then you decide that it is to disagree with the idea requires that you also attempt to destroy the speaker. And so I would urge civility, because if you can't be civil to someone with whom you disagree, you will never persuade them to your way of thinking, if that matters to you. Epictetus told us that it is better to be corrected than to correct. It is better that some flaw in your own thinking be fixed for you than that you go around thinking you can fix everyone else. And I think that's probably true. Like, am I better off if I tell 10 people something that's right and 7 of them knew and 3 didn't, so the 3 that didn't know that I was right now know that I was right about something? Well, that's maybe the world's a slightly better place, but I'm better off if 3 people tell me something I was wrong about and I fixed the way I think. So if we go around being uncivil to one another, then none of that's going to happen. So I would urge a restoration of civility, because then maybe we can have some difficult conversations about the policies and the ideas and the competing means to accomplish. Well, first of all, we would have to identify common goals, and then we would have to discuss the means to accomplish those goals. But with the incivility at the level that it's at, we can't even agree on what we're trying to do, never mind how.
What very well said. Well, I just love how you're able to tie this in back to the fundamentals of being civil, and I absolutely agree. I will tell you and the audience that civility, so far, I've asked the same question to almost every single guest. Civility still keeps coming up as the number one thing, as the most commonly mentioned word that is ironically not mentioned or not even practiced as much nowadays.
Yeah, it was one of the Stoics. It may have been Epictetus, but one of them said, if you have to kill a man, it costs nothing to be polite while doing it.
Right, yeah.
I mean, like, there's absolutely no additional cost to being polite.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So, well, Dana, this was a wonderful conversation, and I just want to really express my appreciation to you, because not only have you entertained so many people, and you've really brought this ray of sunshine and of hope to people, to so many audiences, but I think it's just your ability to really identify some of those key issues that should be talked about but are not, and the authenticity really comes out. And I cannot thank you enough for spending some time today to discuss some of those issues. Not obviously, I want as many people, more people. We want to increase that number of 300 million. Hopefully, most important, I want people to enjoy and have this opportunity to enjoy some entertainment, because we desperately need that nowadays. Just to be able to take a break from a lot of the complexities and challenges in life, to watch something like this and enjoy it for generations to come.
Well, I'm certainly glad to have been here, and it's always a pleasure.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that'll wrap up our 2-part conversation with Dana McLendon, the inventor and creator of the Hot Crazy Matrix. I hope you had a lot of fun and enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Make sure to share that video to your friends and family, to those who haven't seen it already. I'm really, really appreciative of Dana to join us and to share his story with this incredibly viral video. Subscribe to our email list, subscribe to our podcast for the latest content. Enjoy the rest of your day and rest of your week. And remember, a day in America always gets better when we are with our friends and fellow citizens.